we are back. And those of you who are faithful followers of Race Matters, of which we have tons. We tried to start a few weeks ago, but life happens and we just go with the flow around here. So thank you for bearing with us and welcome to again season 2 of Race Matters. I am Sharon Thomas, one of the hosts, the executive producer, and owner of Full Life Communications, where you'll find Race Matters and the host of other shows that deal with human issues, because I'm a mental health, behavioral health, and addictions therapist in private practice. So I deal with all things related to humanity, mental, emotional, and behavioral. So if you want to learn about those things, engage with us in a dialogue about those things, join us on Race Matters as well as other shows. So this show is called Race Matters. So obviously we deal with issues pertaining to race, and we're having the hard conversation, but in a safe place. And we've developed that mindset because we've seen, well, not because, but that's because of who we are. And we've seen that people struggle to have this conversation, understandably so. So we wanted to demonstrate that we could create a safe place to have a hard conversation about race, because it seems to be such a struggle for Americans, regardless of the ethnicity, to have a conversation about race, because what race has meant in American society, and we know all about that. So that's a little bit behind the scenes of why Race Matters was created. And I'm going to let the other ladies introduce themselves and share a little bit about why they decided to join the conversation with me for Race Matters. Each of these ladies I know individually in my personal life, and I asked them to join me here on this conversation, one, because of their ethnic background. I wanted to make the show diverse, and because they had stories to tell, to share, to add to the dialogue. So Stephanie, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and why you came to join Race Matters?
Okay, Sharon, thank you for having me. And I joined because you and I were talking, and I loved your vision, and decided I would like to be part of this. I am of Italian descent. To quickly recap my background, I have had 2 careers in media in New York, one in advertising and one as a TV producer. And I am hoping that I can bring my skill set and my experience to these conversations and help move things forward in a positive way in our discussions.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Mariana, how about you?
Sure. So my name is Mariana Scotaro. I am Moldovan and moved to the States as a teenager. So I think Sharon knew a bit about my ethnic background and being an immigrant. And I came here to the States when I was a teenager, and then I started also to go to school for mental health. And we met in a class and just connected pretty soon. And when she shared this, I thought this was a very important conversation. The class we had together was actually a diversity class. So we kind of like got us to talk about our views on these matters. And I was very honored when she invited me and couldn't refuse.
Couldn't refuse because what, did I twist your arm, Mariana?
Wasn't allowed to refuse.
Right.
I didn't want to. I thought that was such an honor. Yeah.
Yes, I could tell the spirit that you have when we met in class and the project that we did together. So it was when I was thinking of a crew, a host crew, it was a no-brainer to, ask you to be a host. So yes. Thank you for that, Mariana. Rosie.
Hey guys, I'm Rosie. Yes, and you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
That's a good thing. I am of mixed. I'm of mixed ethnicities. My father's Puerto Rican, my mother's Black. Born and raised in Camden, and just went to Woodrow Wilson High School. I retired from a utility company that I worked for over 26 years. And, I met Sharon at church. So she had another show that she was doing before, and she was talking about politics and stuff. And a couple of times I joined her and her other co-host, and it was just fun. I enjoyed it. So when she asked me to join the team she was putting together for this, I immediately said I would love to be a part of it because I just think she is so insightful, and I really get a lot from you two ladies, both Stephanie and Mariana, and your education and stuff. And I just love being a part of the team because you all have so much to offer in your views of race matters, and it coincides and works with me and Sharon, so it really helps people to broaden their mindset and really start to, I guess, accept or hear up from other ethnicities and what they think. So that's basically it for me.
Thank you, Rosie.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Rosie.
Same with you.
Thanks.
We love hearing your opinions, right, Mariana?
I think we make a great team.
Yeah.
And one of the things why we make a great team, which is what Americans struggle with, is because we are diverse.
Mhm.
When you bring people together of different backgrounds and different talents and gifts, we produce. As opposed to
Right.
all of us being the same, we don't produce as well because we're the same. If you bring your gifts and your strengths and I bring mine, we all bring, and now we can create something new and wonderful and beautiful, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes.
why is that such a struggle for us?
I agree.
We're so territorial about everything, but then we don't grow that way.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
this is a great team, and keeping this conversation at the forefront of obviously this platform, but as we grow with society, especially where we are in American society with everything that's going on with race,
Yes.
and people need to see that we can have the hard conversation in love, and that's what we demonstrate. We have differences of opinions and backgrounds, but we can share that, but we can share it in love. We don't have to go to our neutral corners when we're done because we're so mad at each other.
And if I can just add to that, Sharon, I think it's like having the hard conversation is just trying to help people to be able to relate to other ethnicities without being offended. Because just because somebody has a different opinion or a view, or just because they were raised differently, does not mean that they should not be accepted or that you need to stay away from them. I think with what you're doing is telling people we are all inclusive, and I'm not here to suit to fit myself to what you think, and you're not here to fit myself to what I think, but together we can give our opinions and then be more acceptable to each other's backgrounds and stuff, and not be so offended or afraid or try to run from other people because they're different.
Yeah. And if I can speak from my experience a bit, actually, in many ways, I always cared about diversity and such, but there was certain cultures that for some reason when I moved here, because I understood a bit of their language and whatnot, and there was things in common, that was more likely to approach them and become friends and such. But it took exposure, right, to more people to finally work through some of my own biases, right? And it's still a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So I think exposure to people who are different from us is huge, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we should probably share this on Facebook, right?
Right. And yes.
Yeah.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you see me looking away or whatever, I'm trying to work different devices so I can make sure that I'm up on everything, because you know how this live stuff goes. And people, it's just, you've got to have multiple devices going at once. So it's not that I'm not listening or paying attention. I'm trying to do double duty. So if you all who are watching, as well as the host, share the feed of the show. We're on the Full Life Communications page on Facebook, as well as YouTube live streaming. So please go to that page, or I know the hosts may already have something posted, or if not, go to the Full Life Communications page, click the share button and share it to your own page, or share it to one of your destination pages, a group, wherever you can create a watch party. So please share the feed so those who may not know about Full Life Communications yet, they can see it from one of your pages,
right,
and join in the conversation. And Danielle Bailey, one of my faithful watchers who watches all shows that I produce, she is on, and she says, hello, shalom, shalom, Danielle, I miss you. Good to hear from you tonight. Thank you so much for watching the show. And I'm sure, Danielle, you'll have a lot to add me knowing you about Race Matters. So please feel free to put your thoughts and comments on the feed tonight. And we would love to hear from you. And anyone else who's watching, please feel free to share your thoughts and your comments on the feed. And we will also highlight some of the comments as we go throughout the show, so people can see what you're saying actually on the screen, and then maybe even make a comment about it. So let's get into the first question of the evening. And well, first of all, the show right now, we're talking about personal perspectives on race through the years. That's the title of tonight's show. So we're going to go a little bit back in history to talk about our childhood and how race was dealt with and how we learned about race and things of that nature. So our first question that we're throwing out to the host as well as to the audience, we want to talk about how our home life shaped our view about race. So where did we get views about race? So we know oftentimes we even see, on television, social media, where young children, elementary school age, preschool age, they're not concerned about race. They're just playing with one another on the playground and they're all best friends. But at some point, the divide starts to happen where race is noticed. And so typically, and if anyone disagrees, please feel free to share because we can disagree on this platform. Home life is typically where we learn things first. And so again, the children are innocent, but at some point they're learning more than likely from home. And again, there's one place, but sure, many other places, that what race is. And then about race from the perspective of whoever is raising them, teaching them, etc. So we want to talk a little bit about how we learned about race and what we learned about race and what our race experience was growing up. So either one of you ladies want to take that ball first. How did your home life affect your view of race growing up?
Go ahead, you ladies started.
Okay, all right, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the word race was probably not so much in my vocabulary or mindset as much as the word ethnicity, because that's how we referred, my family, we referred to ourselves as Italian ethnicity. We are of Italian descent, American Italian. And my father was in a lot of Italian clubs that promoted talking well about Italian people. I mean, what you would expect, being presented not poorly on TV, tackling stereotypes. Because I used to ask him, I was like, Dad, what do you do? What do you do when you go to the, Sons of Italy and he said, we just, a part of it is making sure it is understood that Italians do know how to speak because they had the language barrier when they came, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one piece. And again, in terms of myself, I'm just focusing now on my view because that's what I took in at a young age, Italian. And we lived in a neighborhood that was not Italian. So even on the bus, people would ask me if I was this or that or et cetera, because I didn't live in an Italian neighborhood and I didn't go to a school where there are a lot of Italians. And I did fail to mention, Sharon, that you and I went to middle school and high school together. So that is where I knew Sharon. And I know we'll get into a little more about our perspectives there. But essentially, I didn't really start out thinking about everybody else. Just sort of, this is our nationality. However, we were aware as a family of other nationalities because my father was very involved in working with different clubs and promoting, helping immigrants, etc. Like that was also a big thing in our house. So then to get to maybe the black and white, and then I'm going to let you talk. I know this sounds a little crazy, but when I was young, it just was a little bit of mixing was part of my world because we did have black girls growing up in grade school. And I came to learn later that other schools around me, there were less black girls. Like I thought it was the same, but other schools that I interacted with then outside of our school, Sharon, were all white. I remember that started to surprise me a little later, in life, right? I noticed later. But that's the first. I'm going to throw that out there. I know I've been babbling, and I have more to say, but I'll start.
And that's good.
Okay. So that's all. I'll let somebody else talk.
Well, for me, growing up in Camden, you had a little bit of everything in the schools, because Camden had a lot of poor families, a lot of, families and being poor has no ethnicity. See, there's no such thing as a race that doesn't have poor in them. So you saw everybody, but and you never really talked about race or ethnicity, probably until we got in high school, and then you just started, hanging out with certain people because they look more like you and stuff. But kids don't understand that. The language of kids is, I just want to have fun and play with other kids, and it's not until you get older that you find yourself separating a little bit more to those who look like you. And then I think growing up, you tried to fit in so much that as a person now growing up, I have to let you all know, and I think I mentioned it on the show before, and I certainly have shared it with the ladies. Growing up, I didn't know I was Puerto Rican until I was 13.
Right.
So for me, I had to actually learn how to accept an ethnicity that I never had a relationship with. I never thought I was a part of. And really back then, I had a little issue with the Puerto Rican, race. I didn't have any fights or anything with them, but I didn't accept them as well as I accepted Black people, because that's who I was until I met my father. And then I said, oh crap, I gotta think, because I'm somebody that I didn't know I was. So when you grow up, again, growing up in Camden, the only time you knew that of a race gap or ethnicity gap is if the cops showed up. Then you saw how you were treated. If something was going on, you were always not believed because of who you were. Every time you get questioned or pulled over, the question wasn't did you realize you were speeding? The question is this your car? Why are you here? Do you know what this is? What do you know why I'm pulling you over? No, because if I did, I would have probably not did it. Why did you pull me over? So, and then you have to be you're scared when you see certain things, like if you see cop lights behind you. Unlike I've seen with other ethnicities, you panicked first. You start looking around to see what you're doing. You look at your speedometer. You're looking, and you
anxiety builds, right?
You automatically feel that you're guilty of something, even though you've done nothing wrong. When you see the cop lights behind you, I've done something wrong. No, I didn't.
So
that mentality is there.
Right. Rosie, I'm curious, do you remember stories like that with like your mom driving around or another?
Well, my mom was a quadriplegic. She was paralyzed from the neck down since I was 3 years old. So she never drove us around or anything like that. So everything we did was by foot. If we wanted to go to the supermarket, which might have been half a mile away, we had to walk with push carts and stuff. So we didn't have those luxuries of having somebody, having two parents. It was my mom was a single parent. She had 6 kids and she was bedridden. If not by the grace of God and my oldest sister, who went to court to keep us together at probably like 12 or 13, begging the court not to separate us, I might not have grown up with my brothers and sisters. But she had to go to court with our next door neighbor and beg for the judge to not separate us.
Wow.
So our things, anything I experienced negatively dealing with cops and stuff like that wasn't until we were adults, because as kids we always stayed close to home because mom was in a bed. So I think that made us grow up as a tight family, but you still weren't like you still had to deal with life issues once you left the house.
Right, right.
The world was out there to greet you and tell you you're not like us.
Right. Again, yes, that's notion that would never have entered my mind until later, until we learned more and saw more, because I
Right.
think I shared with you, and I'm just going to bring it up again, the story where I went in the store with my girlfriend who was a Black woman, and I went to get a 99-cent folder, and I started walking out without the receipt, and she said, "Aren't you going to take your receipt?" And I still didn't get it. I thought she meant if I wanted to return the 99-cent folder.
Right.
And I said, "No, my God, it's 99 cents. Like, it still didn't hit me."
Mhm.
And she,
No. That's a
a
no.
Black girl would never leave a store without
A
a
Black
receipt.
person, not girl.
Black
Person.
person, right? And I just, even that, like, I had to register it later. You know, like
Mm.
Right.
the pieces.
And
that's-
even if you left as a Black person, even if you left the store with a receipt, sometimes you still had to justify everything in the bag was on your receipt.
right.
Sometimes you would have to empty that bag. If somebody didn't believe you, you got to empty your bag on the counter and point everything out with the receipt and what's in the bag.
Mm.
But see, for us, that's normal. For other ethnicities, that's unconscionable.
Right.
Yeah. So
And that's
in terms of that,
Go
Go ahead, Mariana.
I was just curious before I'm going to share about my experience a bit. I have one more question for you. Actually, both of you ladies, Sharon and Rosie. But having those experiences, like, how do you respond when people say that, like, oh, those things are in the past, right? America, like, came a long way, when, like, you both are describing experiences, right, that you've had firsthand, people close to you experience, people you care about, right?
Mhm.
Well, all you have to do is look at YouTube and stuff. There was a young Black woman with her family, and she had just this just happened this year, and she left a supermarket, and they called the cops on them, somebody in the store, and they forced them to stay in that store and not only prove what was in their bag, but to go out to their car and get any other bags in their car with receipts and prove that everything in their bags was on the receipt also. And I thank God for the girls, because you know what they did after they proved it? Then they returned all the merchandise and said, "Give me my money back."
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
why the question is, why do you look at me and automatically presume I'm up to no good?
Exactly.
Right. And
There's
and
bad
just
apples in every bunch, but why is our whole bunch, put in
There's
the same basket?
once
And like you said,
one
all you have to do is watch
thing
social media.
happen.
Right. You
Yeah.
can't say, oh, that what Mariana's question. You can't really say, not you can't ask the question. I'm saying to answer the question, Mariana. Oh, that was in the past. It doesn't happen. Yeah. Just look at social media and all the videos that people are posting of things that are happening today. So it's not a yesteryear thing. It is still going on.
The only difference is now it's broadcasted. So what's happening is people are getting busted doing what they've been doing for generations, and now they have to explain why they're doing what they're doing to people who have done no wrong. That's the only difference.
Right.
I think,
but I guess I would want.
I'm sorry, Mariana. Go ahead.
Okay.
I just want to
think
jump.
you can go ahead this time, because I think that sometimes there's a bit of a delay.
There is a delay, but I want to finish on your question, Mariana, because I think it's a good point to raise. I see a lot of memes, just to Mariana's point, that say, why should I pay for what happened in the past? What, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone has all the things you would imagine. And your response, and right, understandably so, as we see all these videos, is it's still happening, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the, which we can't tackle tonight or God knows when, one of the big challenges is, again, because there is so much media and so much choice, they block out blocks of information. So they still, and I'm not making an excuse, but there are groups of people that don't believe, number one, it's still happening like it is, because they have blinders. They don't look at what we're looking at. And they also, it's just not in their mindset. It's sort of like, hey, I'm not prejudiced, so nobody else is. Like, and they might not be, you know what I mean? But they don't also understand the residual effects of treating people that badly and other people glomming onto it. It doesn't just go away,
Right.
even though technically slavery itself, yes, was 200 years ago, but just like the Black Wall Street, I mean, wasn't that in the 50s? I mean, so much true. All the segregation, that all was not that long ago.
Right.
And a lot of those elderly people, you know, they might still be alive or they had children, they passed that mindset on to. So that's another big challenge too. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is it's not enough for us to say, hey, you see that it exists. I mean, yes, we say it, but I go back to the frustration of how do we really get to people to say, please, you know, please take this moment or try or you know, this sensitivity thing happening. But anyway,
people have to be willing, you know, to open up their mind, Stephanie. Just like you said earlier about this effect of people who don't want to see it. They have blinders on, and you can take the blinders off whenever you want. That's a choice. And even in today, I think even if you show someone of that mindset, you know, a video, and they very well may say fake news, you know, oh, that's made up. I don't know if that's true or not, or real or not, because that's the age that we're living in. You can give someone the facts and they still won't believe it.
Right.
Right.
So,
you know, and
and my question would be, right, if we have, is it 13 million African Americans in this country? I know 13% of the population at least, right?
Yeah, so I don't know how many.
I'll have to look that up. I looked it up at some point, but numbers never are something that I can remember. But so that's a lot of voices, right?
I think it's a lot more.
So Mariana, did you ever talk about like when you grew up, like how things were?
Oh yes,
right.
And
I'm trying to keep us staying on track, y'all. Y'all know we could sidetrack real easy.
Exactly.
Well, she said she had a couple of questions before she
did, but I wanted to make sure we got back to her.
Right. I thought did you ask your second question yet, Mariana?
That was
it. So I wanted to also like ask you two a few questions, or one or two, I don't remember at this point. I'll share in a minute too. But whatever you girls were sharing was meaty stuff, so I was going for it. But yes, I guess this one is more rhetorical, right? Because it would take a lot of time to unpack. But you know, you'd be the idea of like, well, we believe Jewish people about the Holocaust, and we didn't have these smartphones to see exactly what happened. We saw pictures and we believe it. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. Absolutely, we should believe it, right? But we have millions of Americans today telling us that that's what they're experiencing, right? So, yeah.
Right. So why is one when both of them are a Holocaust, right?
Yeah.
Both of them are atrocities, but one is I mean, some people now said I laugh, but it's not even funny. Like slavery didn't even exist, or it was a good thing that Black people were slaves because you know the mindset today.
But Sharon, don't you also think it's because now, of course, I'm just saying, maybe I'm thinking like this, but don't you also think it's because we didn't cause that atrocity, so we can face it and we can say it was wrong and we can tell people something needs to happen to give these people some kind of money or something for what they went through. But now this we caused, so now we're like, hey, now wait a minute now. That wasn't me. I wasn't back then. Yes, if you're telling us to respect what happened at the Holocaust and you say they need reparations or whatever they need to right the wrong, then how is it that you won't right your own wrong? How is it that now it's an offense to what's happened to somebody else? Now it's I've got to face the offense that we did, but now it's off the table because, you know, hey, y'all need to get over that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's one thing. And, you know, US, if we remember, as a collective, right, had very strong words towards Germany, right?
Right.
And it's like, but yours lasted way longer for many more generations. So, yeah.
Right.
I don't know if you saw on there, Sharon, what Melissa said, but even
I just highlighted it.
That's my niece. Melissa Freeman's my niece, but even she was talking about that. So
yeah, I had put a question up about how old were you when you learned about race, and Melissa said back because she can remember probably 4 or 5. She was put in a predominantly white sport, and that's when she knew she was different.
And how so?
Melissa, were you treated differently,
Yeah.
or just because you saw you were of a different hue, color, and than others, then you knew something was different? Or were you both treated differently and you saw that you were a different hue, or one of the other? If you could answer that, and then we'll give your answer. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah. Okay, I guess in the meantime, as she answers to us, we can get on topic. Listen, we all have a lot to say, right? So, I mean, I do have to say that living in US from 15 and on, which was still a young age when I look at this age back, right? In my 30s, now early 30s. And my experience in Moldova growing up, because the exposure just doesn't compare, right? Here from the beginning, I went to a high school right away that was diverse in Northeast area. It was actually in the suburbs in Ben Salem. But in Moldova, I grew up in a village of a few hundred families. And on occasion, we would go to the capital city where you could see more diverse people. And Moldova was a bit more blended even than some other countries around us, even though we were poor, because that was some intentional movement that Russia did to bring other Russian-speaking people so they can vote for the communists and so on. But I didn't interact with them like on a daily basis. That was just very rare. We didn't even have a TV until I was, I want to say 10, 11, 12. So I guess that mattered in some ways, right? I didn't raise a lot of opportunities for my parents to talk about that too much, but I can talk about shades of racism, right? Or, for example, we had a lot of gypsy in Moldova, right? And their color was a bit darker than ours, and they were very discriminated. And there was a difference between the blue-eyed, blonde Moldovians versus those like me who are brunette and darker eyes. And it mattered because you could see that because of how people were treated, oftentimes the more blonde people were more like confident and whatnot, and then brunette people wanted to be blonde or wanted their kids, right, to be blonde. And I heard many times like parents say to like their young adults when they start dating, why didn't you pick someone who's like with blue eyes, like that kind of stuff. So yeah, it happens. It exists, right? And in different ways. On TV, like once that happened, and we had one, and we had like American shows and stuff, we would see people of color, and it was something like, we never saw that with our own eyes. It's kind of interesting and whatnot. Some of the language initially was both like curiosity and, some people were like, oh, they look so beautiful. But then I heard comment about like really dark skin that wasn't just right as well. And so from my home experience, I grew up very conservative Christian. So I think in many ways, my parents were trying to be loving to many people. They were helping the gypsies at times, but there was this other shade too of like bias. And my own mom, because she was darker skin and she was called a gypsy growing up a lot, right? She kind of wanted to identify more with lighter skinned people and such. So it's been a process, and I think our entire family over time has gone through some, especially in recent years, conversations about race, and I think we made a bit of a progress, but I think there's still work to do for all of us.
It's an evolution, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't think we will ever, arrive, so to speak, because we're always evolving as people, as we should.
Right.
But as long as we keep trying, that that's the point. I'll answer the question now about my home life and how it shaped my view about race. I don't know exactly what age I went to an all-black elementary school, and then after 7th grade on is when I began going to private school, which is where I met Stephanie. And the private school was predominantly white, and it was in the suburbs of Philadelphia on the main line. And that's when I began to experience race. So I would say, as far as my experience in the world, it began in my private schooling. And I'm not saying that it was a bad experience. That's just where I began to experience race. In my home life, my parents were always sharing about how everybody is equal. They had white friends, they had black friends, and so on in the workplace. And so, and they had, you know, positive stories and some negative stories, but they always, you know, impressed upon my brother and I that, you know, race shouldn't be an issue, although it is in society, but that's not how it should be. So I think because of the different conversations, and it wasn't many, but the different conversations that my parents had, and also too how I saw them live, which was really more the issue, how I saw them live with their white friends and black friends and whatever, you know, a multi-ethnic friendship, and how they treated everyone the same. So that's what stuck with me. So that's why my mindset was that, you know, we're all the same. We just might, you know, lighter or darker shades of one another, so to speak. Now, all of my family, extended family, didn't have the same mindset. Some people were very more militant, shall I say, because of what you know, the racial issues that you know, are in our society, and so they would take a more of a pro-black stance. Which, and I think pro-black doesn't mean you're non-white; you're just pro-black. But for some of them, they were pro-black and non-white. But and I understood because of the experiences, but I just don't think a tit for tat is the way to go. So that's kind of what my experience has been, or was, growing up, how I learned about it, and then my experiences, which we'll get into with a later question, you know, regarding high school and how that affected our lives. So yes.
Good question. So when you did the transition from elementary school to then going to an all white school, like was there any kind of I'm going to say like an identity crisis, or was there any kind of like shock to you to like to be in a predominantly black and then be in a predominantly white, and like did it make you feel uncomfortable, or you know, how did you feel when you had to do that transition?
That's a great.
Yeah, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I didn't. I just, you know,
You
I fit right in. Yeah, I
fit
fit
right
right in.
We started at the same
And
time.
you know, we didn't really have like race issues like say society did.
Right.
So we had a really good group. It was an all-girls school too. So we had a
Small
really
class.
right, exactly. And it was a small class with 16 people because it's private school, you know? And so we were, and we were all close because it was so few of us.
Oh, small.
Of course,
We had
everybody
to like each other. No.
right, exactly. And, you know, and everybody kind of had their groups, but even though okay, a small group of people, so we're all close. And then within the small group, then we had smaller groups, but they weren't cliquish smaller.
Right. Yeah.
Just because, you know, some people gravitate towards certain personalities. So we all got along. So I, you know, I thank God that my experience was that. However, I say that, but there were, you could still see, could still see some division only in the fact of what I knew, but that I don't think the white kids knew. Because of what I knew about race being on the black end, like such as microaggressions. They probably didn't know that, you know, asking me about my hair or touching my hair was something that was offensive to black people because they just don't know. Right. So, and at that time, I didn't know about microaggressions. I learned that, you know, just, you know, as an adult. So I'm not blaming anyone for it. It's just that that's how it was. It was innocent. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was innocent. And so it was like a no harm, no foul. Hey, we're all friends, and it's meaningless to us because we're friends.
Right.
You know,
that makes me think how acceptable one ethnicity is over another, because you will I've never seen it, and I don't know if you all have ever seen it, but you will never find a black person saying to a white person, "Oh, can I feel your hair? Wow, it looks silky. Can I touch it? Oh, that is so," you know, so all the races were, I guess, in my opinion, groomed to accept a certain ethnicity over everyone else's. And because we grew up in a society that accepted this ethnicity over the rest, we all knew what blonde hair, blue eyed, and different straight hair and this and that. And then, but we always were taught we had to fit in. Like, if you read my niece's thing where she was talking about you had to be made to fit in, and you had to watch how you talked. You had to watch your speech.
Right.
Just like people that grow up in the ghetto, if you talk a certain way, that's your lingo in the ghetto. That doesn't mean you're ignorant. You're just bilingual right now, in my opinion, because the bottom line is when you go to, and I told you all about my experience with the company I used to work for, but I told you, but when you go to another area, you go to Cherry Hill or something, and you're still talking like you slang and stuff, then they consider you, oh, you're ignorant. You don't know how to pronounce words. No, I'm smarter than you. It's just that I talk different. And because I talk different, you now have deemed me ignorant, uneducated, and this and that. And I probably can run circles around you. Right. But it's your ideology of what ignorance is and what education is that makes you put me in a basket that says she's uneducated, she doesn't understand, or we have to talk to her a certain way because she'll never understand where we're coming from. She's different. She's poor and she's uneducated, but that's not the case. We just put this different language.
Right. And when you mentioned about Rosie, how we speak out, before we went on the air, we were talking about code switching, and how Black people switch, when we're in the professional arena, we speak professionally like this, but when we're home, we might have a little bit more slang to our, more flavor, more slang to our conversation, to our verbiage. But we know we have to perform, unfortunately. And not that it's not a part of who we are, but if we could just be who we are all the time, it might not be accepted in certain circles where we're being judged for a promotion, or where we're being judged for being hired or entered into, college or whatever. So we have to try what's called code switching, behave what is in the acceptable way with the tone of voice, with how we dress. And I'll just even share this. When I was sharing with the ladies before our show, I was talking about wigs because I wear wigs all the time. And so that's how I began to talk about code switching. Now, I'm not saying all Black people do this. This is what Sharon Thomas does. So I have different wigs for different shows that I do and different arenas that I go into. So this particular wig that I have on tonight is not so much for this show, because this show is Race Matters. Me and these ladies were friends. And to me, it's a show that just involves personality. So I can show and I tend to show my personality through how I dress and my hair and styles and wigs. When I'm doing the news, this is my newscaster wig that I have on right now, because it can go Black, it can go white. It's straight, it's not going to be offensive to anyone, as opposed to my more curly, bushier, more ethnic looking wigs that I might wear on this show or some other show that's more laid back. Or if I'm going into certain arenas, when I do my presentations or my seminars and workshops, I make sure I blend. Like I might wear this wig, so I'm not, I don't want to attract too much attention to myself. I want you to listen to what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is what the presentation is about. And I don't want anyone wondering, like, wow, I wonder why her hair is like that. So I have to fit into, I'm code switching in my wigs, right? It's not
I
just
love
speech. People might think it's just the language, but it's also too. And when I dress, how I dress when I'm going to do a presentation or whatever, I make sure it's more of the what do you want to call it, like corporate, like corporate America, is more acceptable. But in human services, which is my field, we don't dress corporate. We dress more just regular. We're professional, but we don't have to wear a suit and tie every day. So when I'm doing presentations, I make sure it's a little more corporate, because that's what's acceptable. Because if I give too much flavor, then the attention is going to be on me and my person rather than what I'm trying to teach. in the presentation. And I don't want anybody to miss the message because they're not understanding me, because they don't understand my blackness.
Right.
So it's a whole thing.
It is.
That, you know, that people don't understand outside of our race, that what we have to do to be accepted.
So we have to change the way we speak, the way we look, the outfits we wear, because you can't go in there with an African outfit and an afro and a natural, because all of that, like Sharon said, would take away from the message you would come to give. And then if you were a speaker, you would have to be so impressive, you know, that you take their mind off of what your appearance is, and they start hearing what you're saying. And mind you, when they leave that speech or that conference, they're going to say, I get now, I'm not trying to say this is for everybody, but some of them people will walk out of there and say, man, for a black person, she sure was intelligent. What?
Exactly.
It's not my ethnicity that makes me intelligent. I'm intelligent.
That's
exactly.
That's
I want you to see my resume and not see my ethnicity. And so therefore I blend in with you. So my resume stands out more than, oh, wow, look at her skin color. Look at her hair. You know?
Right. Well, I might have mentioned to you when I was first interviewing for advertising jobs, people were saying to me, you're Italian? You speak so well.
You speak so well.
You have great diction. I mean, I can just tell you. And I would come home and tell my mother, and my mother was like, yay, because she was on me, you know, as a kid, for that very reason. Because she said people will make fun of Italians, etc. I mean, less so today. And again, it wasn't a big like, woo, everybody's making fun of me. But it was this low grade where I relate on one level to what you're saying, because my dad used to actually iron my sister's hair to straighten it. And I can tell you, when I would go to certain dances, if I straightened my hair, my dance card would certainly have a lot more punches in the neighborhood I was in, the non-Italian neighborhood. And even though they told me they would date me, they didn't want to marry me because I was Italian, but they would date me because my hair was straight. But anyway, so there is, I relate a little to the look thing. It wasn't a huge deal, but yes, number one, corporate does have a certain requirement. But what I was going to say to you, Sharon, I don't know if you remember when we were younger, and maybe we did it more in grade school, but me and some of the other white girls, we used to speak your slang with you. I mean, really, we loved you so much. We were just like, girl, we would start talking.
I remember a little of it. I remember a little of it. Because, you know, we rub off on each other. You know?
I would never do it now because nobody would understand me. They'd be like, what the are you doing? So I'm like, even now, I'm afraid to say, but you don't even remember, like, because it was so natural.
It's what we did.
So,
like I said, that's that other language, you know. It's
so we
you know,
I am curious about that, Rosie. Sharon.
Hold on one second, Mariana, if I can make this comment, just because it speaks to what Stephanie was saying. When I would come home to my own neighborhood, and I'm just being me, right? My black friends, you sound white, right? You sound like a valley girl, and I did.
Well, you know what, Sharon? But Sharon, my niece Melissa, who's on with us and stuff, she can tell you how when she would come from, because she grew up in Willingboro, and back then when she was growing up, yes, they talk proper and everything. And when she would come to our house in Camden, we were like, "What, you trying to act white?" You know,
that's what I get all the time. You're acting white.
She was so proper, and she just everything. The way she enunciated words. Oh, what are you trying to act white? But a lot of people don't understand. Nobody's trying to act nothing. They're just a part of where they're growing up. They're
exactly.
You know, and ain't nobody trying to act like nothing. You know, I mean,
influence.
I mean, there's levels.
I would have never
like
known
impressing others, right?
Yeah. We had a white guy that we grew up with in Camden, and people used to be like, "What, you trying to act black?" No, he grew up in our ghetto, in Camden. And matter of fact, he wishes, like, sometimes they would say, "Man, I ain't white, I'm Puerto Rican, or I'm black," you know, because because they would be attacked for the way they were talking and stuff. They were considered trying to act black. So then they said, because I ain't white, I am black. Because they would get offended defending the way they spoke, but they grew up in Camden, so they.
And that's how we know, and studies even show, the environment has more of an effect on us than other things. Like I said, this white person who grew up in a black neighborhood, he has the ethnic sound of the neighborhood, right? I had, say, the ethnic sound of where I went to school and how I was, so it's not I'm trying to be. That's the influence of the environment.
Natural,
and that's all of us.
Wait, do one of
our ethnicity is.
So Mariana, when you came into, like, when you started hanging around people and you were talking to them, like, did they like say, oh well, you got an accent, where you from? Like, I mean,
all the time,
because people with you, right? They would question. And sometimes they might question, I wonder how smart she is. Because just because you had an accent, you're not as smart as them.
Right. Or you do not understand. Right.
What do you say, Mariana?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot. Is it funny when Stephanie was talking about, you're Italian, so I have to speak slower. Initially, I would say I don't speak English because I actually didn't when I came here. And this happened to other people that I know. And when we say we don't speak English, people start yelling louder and louder, like I can hear. I just don't understand you. So regardless
I'm not deaf. I just don't understand your words.
Yeah, regardless of how loud we're gonna speak, I probably still won't understand them. Now, slower helps in the beginning, right? Because the English here is very fast and different than like some of the English that is taught in schools in Europe and whatnot. So slower helps. But I heard a lot of that, and honestly, some of the things that Sharon was also talking about in terms of like presenting and whatnot. There's levels of that as an immigrant. There's levels of that as being a woman, right? But I still think it doesn't compare to the Black woman in this country and the amount of things that you have to do in order to be heard or be respected. So I can definitely believe you all for all of that because I've experienced smaller levels of that. And to this day, yes, like I shouldn't say too much details, but even in my professional experience, I had people who in the beginning were making faces, and this wasn't that long ago, right? Within the last 2, 3, 4 years. Maybe a bit more. I just don't want to like give too many details, right? And in the beginning of therapy with me, they're like, insinuating that they couldn't understand a lot of what I was saying. And essentially I had to prove myself, right? And the same people at the beginning, at the end of, our work together were like really sad that, we were ending. Did we lose Sharon?
Yeah, Sharon, we lost you.
Okay, so we'll continue. So
yeah, hopefully we'll be back.
That was happening quite a bit.
But even my niece, she was mentioning, because when we were talking about, when Sharon was talking about her hair, but even my niece, she put up there, she said, our children have been suspended from school for having beads in their hair. And like there was one young wrestler.
Oh, really?
Because, a young wrestler, I don't know if he had dreadlocks or he had braids. And he was during the last wrestling match to win first place in the match. And now he didn't beat all of the other opponents, but at the final match, the referee made somebody go out there and cut his hair off, cut the dreadlocks or the braids out. And they said, if that's not doesn't go with the code, if you don't cut it, you're going to forfeit your match. And he stood on the floor. Now, how humiliating is this? But he stood on the floor while somebody went out because he said he didn't want to cut it. But they said, but this is the final match and you're going to win. And they walked out on that floor and they cut his hair right there on the floor for him to have his final match and win. But can you imagine?
I remember that story.
Can you imagine the emotional destruction that does. I mean, that would make somebody say, I'm not going to do this no more. But, you know, why do you have to take my identity away from me just because I'm better than you?
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm better than you because I worked hard. I did everything that I needed to get to where I am. And now you're saying my work ethics don't mean a thing. Cut your hair or you're not winning. So the attacks, you know, it's very destructive, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So look, I mean,
So
and
Melissa has a
Logan-
few other good comments.
Yeah, let's read some of these comments because I don't want them to go by. So, Rosie, since you're in the lower portion where Mariana was, it's going to cover up your face. So I apologize.
No
That's
problem.
just-
Oh, it's
so
no
we're going to go back to Melissa answering our question. And she said that she was raised to understand that there were two worlds, ours and theirs, and that I better learn how to navigate theirs to be successful. And we were talking about this prior to the show going on tonight. From my hair to my disarming conversation, avoiding all topics that would make them uncomfortable. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, yeah, we do. We just, you know.
and
Like what
this
topics?
is
I
your
want.
niece. She looks young, Rosie, right?
My
Your
niece?
must
Well,
be
actually,
my
yeah, she does. Well, okay, now I'm not trying to be crazy and stuff, but she's black, so she looks young.
okay.
Like, you ever
We-
heard the saying black don't
Yeah,
crack?
black
baby?
don't
Black
crack.
don't crack, yo.
I love
Black
Another
don't crack.
reason
That's what
to
Rosie
celebrate
say.
it, right?
I'm not gonna give her age, but she isn't in her 20s or 30s. Okay, so but I'm not gonna give her age, but she you know, she's had her experience, you know,
Right.
growing up in Willingboro and having to fit the mold
Right.
of another
Yeah, like you
ethnicity just to be accepted in that world. And then the grading system on us, and I don't mean in school, I'm talking about our performance has to be so above and beyond
Right.
so that
Right.
we can just equal the others. Then, you know, I mean, you have your work ethics has to be like Simone Biles, and then
Right.
you still don't get accepted because you know it's something wrong with you. You're doing so much better than the white kids that there's something wrong, and we are going to have to penalize you because something is wrong. You know,
So Melissa says just what you were saying. She says, "Yep, we had to, you know, fit into their world." And she also says, when we were talking about hair, truth, we worry about our natural hair offending others. And when I was talking about the wigs and everything like that, and then she said, "Ain't that the truth? We worry about our natural hair being offensive." So many things that she can relate to based on our conversation. She says she gets comments constantly because she changes her hairstyle. You know, so do you guys get constantly questioned about changing your hairstyles, Mariana and Stephanie?
No, I mean I had my hair black in the winter. From my natural hair is like dark brown. I had it black in the winter. People were like, you know, commenting on it, saying like how good it looks. I had highlights for the summer, same. I just get like kind of like praises and compliments for it. Either way, they're like, "Oh, it looks good on you. It looks good." That's all I hear about. Yeah,
Okay.
not like why you choose that or that.
Right. I go back to no. The only comments when I get comments are if it's straight, you know,
Mhm.
versus wavy and more natural, it's more noticeable. So I don't
Right.
know, if, you know, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
difference. But
Right.
some people prefer that style, blah blah blah. So
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
others
Yeah,
don't.
but
But what I'm sorry, but I was just
no,
gonna
go
ask
ahead.
Sharon and Rosie, and I don't know, Mariana, maybe you've seen it, or maybe none of you have seen it. The movie Hair that Chris Rock put out.
Mhm.
I
I
did see it a while back.
I didn't
How
see it.
I actually never saw it. I wanted to see it. Was that a good? Is that something?
I saw it once. I can't remember. I know I enjoyed watching it, but I can't even really tell you. I can't even tell
But
you. I think he went around to these different
Right.
places that sold weave hair,
Right,
and
and
he educated us about it. But I don't remember more than that.
I think there was education about the different ethnicities and their hair.
Mhm. Right. He
Indian.
actually went over to Asia and where a lot of the hair comes from.
Right.
And yeah, it was very educational.
Right. The
You
only
know.
I wanted to see it with one of my black girlfriends, but she said it more politely, but I know she wanted to see it with another black girlfriend, which I was okay with. You know what I mean?
Well,
And because I said,
right.
hey, let's go. We would go to movies. And she said, I promised to see it with so-and-so. And I,
Right.
normally she would do both. I was like, oh,
Right.
okay.
That was the hint.
Right. So that's why I'm asking about it. But I didn't get a chance to see it. And I blame her because I wanted to go that
Yeah.
day. No.
Right.
Rosie, what were
So
you
another
gonna
comment.
Go
Oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Sharon, sorry.
No, I was just going to read Melissa's other comment. She said that from what we were talking about, there's proof that racism exists because we are passing laws to not discriminate for hairstyle or texture. And I know New York passed laws on that. And you know, this is how crazy it is. We have to pass laws to stop judging people about how their hair grows out of their scalp.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
I know.
It's
That
just
is great.
insane.
You know, you have no control over that kind of stuff, and yet you want to pass a law because it does not look like yours. You know, I should not be acceptable because I look more like you than I look like me and where I come from. You know, and it's just.
And I'm not the one with that problem if that exists.
I'm not the one with the issue.
Problem. Right.
It's punishing the wrong person.
Yeah,
exactly. And so this other comment that Melissa made, you had already spoke to about her experience with the bees with her children and whatnot, and about the wrestler. It's, you know, I have a question for well, you know what, I'll save that for a little bit later. Let me these other comments. Melissa says, Melissa's right on the money tonight. Thank you so much, Melissa.
I know, right?
Yeah. Vernacular slang is regional. Exactly. And so, but why should it be a problem? Regardless, you understand me, I understand you.
Right.
Let's keep it moving. You know, we always have to judge.
It's like when I told you.
Light.
It's like when I explained to you all when at my job they were doing this. They were having a thing on how to talk to customers and stuff like that. You know, and that's where all of this comes in, because they were showing us a video on how you go to a customer, how you talk to them, how you introduce yourself. And then they had each of the employees that were in the room try it out. Okay, you go. Okay, now how would you do it? So then they got to me and they said, okay, Rosie, if you were going to a customer's, how would you do it? And I laughed at them and they were like, well, why are you laughing? I said, because that's not reality. And they were like, well, what do you mean that's not reality? I said, okay, according to your video, if I go to a customer's house, this is how I'm to speak. Hello, my name is Rosie. I'm with such and such a company, and I am here to do such and such and such and such, you know, and that's how I'm to speak. I said, okay, that's acceptable in Cherry Hill. That's acceptable in Haddon Heights, Haddonfield. I said, but if I go into Camden, that's not going to happen. I said, because if I knock on the door and they open it and I say, hello, my name is Rosie. I'm with such and such a company. And I boom, either they're going to slam the door or they're going to ask me what's wrong with me.
Right.
So now I'm in Camden. I used to, when I was in Camden, I was up a pole one time working on the lines. And somebody walked by in Camden. Well, I call it Cam Salkin because it was the borderline of Camden and Pennsauken. And the person that was walking by was screaming, yo, that's what I'm talking about. You know, that's how I like to see it. I'm not going to say, well, thank you very much. No, I'm up there and I'm saying, you know what I'm talking about? You see where I'm coming from? That's what it's like. It's just like that. I'm getting them dollars. I'm getting them Benjamins. So I have to speak their language.
Yeah.
You know, if I go into a Spanish community, I got to throw in a little Spanish. Oh, hola, mi nombre es Rosalina. Yo estoy aquí para los teléfonos. So I have to speak a language to you that your video does not depict. So don't ask me how I'm going to do it. I have to tell you it depends on the environment that I'm in, because talking like that could jeopardize me, especially if I'm in Camden and I'm talking like that. You become a target. Don't understand how dangerous it could be in the wrong community, responding the wrong way or talking the wrong way. You get eyes on you.
Right.
And people, because people who worked in Camden, if they're up on the pole doing stuff, the first thing that the people in Camden, some of the people in certain parts of Camden thought is, you're a narc, you're up there putting cameras up to watch the community. And that's unfortunate because that's what the mentality is. If somebody's up a pole, it's a cop. They're putting cameras, they're watching our community. So you had to act totally different, and you had to relate to the people on the ground before you went up and did your work. Because if not, then they thought you were cops. So you can't do everything the same in every community.
Right. I remember when in high school, Sharon, one of our Black classmates, had said one morning she came into school, and we did wear uniforms, everybody, and she said, ugh, just imagine walking through my neighborhood in a uniform, duck shoes, and carrying a Barry Manilow album. The Black girl, she's like, you have no idea. And I did.
Right. You think you recall you're acting white now? Can you imagine?
But that's right. You had explained that to us. I didn't fully, get it then. I mean, I got it the way she said it.
Right.
But more fully understanding these days.
Exactly. You guys, Melissa put a link to a movie in the feed, so check that out. And she says that the movie sheds light on our struggle with being accepted by others while trying to accept ourselves, and the dichotomy of it all. So check out that link. Thank you for sharing that link to that movie, Melissa. That sounds like a very interesting and necessary excuse me, movie for people to watch. Letisa has a comment. Thank you for joining us, Letisa. She said, yes, it will, because I live in Camden, and that's never my response. I'm not sure what was being said.
She added another comment.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I wonder if the next comment she has might give a bit more context.
Oh, if you speak hood, there it is, get down.
Okay, if you speak hood, coming to my door will make me mad. Camden has more class than what is usually referenced. So she's shedding a different light.
She's than
what you were saying, Rosie.
Yeah.
So
what are your thoughts? Yeah.
What we have to understand is, of course, and I agree with her wholeheartedly, because I mean, especially if you go to certain people that have certain education and stuff like that, because when you're made to be educated, then you expect everybody to come to your door sounding educated. But still, when you're approached by somebody, like I said, when I was up that pole and that person was talking to me in hood language, I'm not going to be disrespectful and talk to them in a language that is not relating to who they are, because then it might have offended them. So when I say that, I mean, trust me, there is so much education in Camden. Like the song from Ty Tribbett, there's good in the hood. You know what I'm saying? People are educated, especially the older you are, the more education you have, and the more you will try to make sure you're speaking properly and everything. But you have young people today that say, accept me for who I am. And we can't be so
So
Rosie,
I'm curious.
Excuse me, lady.
Would you say levels?
Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah,
I can't see Rosie. Did Rosie drop?
Yes,
I can
she
hear her, but I can't see her.
We only hear you, Rosie.
Yeah, Rosie, you might want to click out and click back in, because on my screen I can't put you back in because you disappeared totally. Okay. I don't see a picture. Let me try and bring you in and see if the picture pops up. Okay, it's about to come up.
Yeah, I'm counting in. Yeah.
She's back.
You're back.
Okay, Mariana, you were about to say something?
Yeah, so I was wondering, because I think I can see how, like, this is a bit of a different angle, but they can both also say something similar. And I'm wondering,
good
Rosie,
hair.
what you're saying is it's important to pay attention to people, right? Like when we interact with a human being, can we attune to them? Can we notice who they are and how they approach us, right? And then meet people and greet them and talk to them as they might want to, right?
Right.
And sure, sometimes it's more challenging to know, but other times it's very easy, right? They just say one word and you know what to do next.
And that's why
switching doesn't just go for interracial. It goes with intra-racial as well. So with Rosie recognizing, someone who's we'll just say speaking hood, then she's going to go with that person with that. But then someone who's speaking some other way, then she's going to go with them with that, because she's fluent like that in how to deal with people. So, which is a good thing, because then
that's why I'm
offending anyone or whatever like that. So we code switch all the time. But now, Mariana and Rosie, I'll let you finish in a second. And then Rosie, when you finish, if Mariana and Stephanie, so I don't want to lose this, if you can answer this question, do you guys code switch? So I'm gonna put that out there. Rosie, you continue, and then you guys can keep going. Can answer.
So that's why I mentioned, it's not like a lot of people say, like Latice mentioned about talking hood, but in a lot of situations, it's not talking hood. It's just, if somebody grew up a certain way, then we shouldn't be so closed-minded and cold to the way they come to actually make them feel horrible about how they're perceived. You know what I'm saying? A person does not, when the person knocks on your door and talks to you, they don't necessarily think they're talking hood. They're just talking. So we do the same thing to our own people sometimes that we don't accept the world doing to us. Whereas if I go into Cherry Hill and I may think I'm talking good English, but I get there and they think that I'm still hood because I don't talk with the right accent, or I don't enunciate things the way they do. And then they see me as being hood or not having the proper education. Well, then I turn around and I go to Camden, and now somebody who grew up on the streets of Camden who talk hood come to say something to me. And then now I shut them off because they're not talking the way I think they should talk. And that's why we have to be very careful about even with talking about the hood language, because they're not talking hood, they're just talking. And because you perceive it as hood doesn't mean they're being ignorant and disrespectful. They don't understand that you think they're talking hood. And we got to be very careful and very sensitive about calling people out because they don't talk like I think they should talk.
Well, and here's the thing too, if we want to label something, hood talk, whatever, because we can label everyone's neighborhood. That's the language of their hood, whether you're white, black, rich, wealthy, educated, it doesn't matter. So that's Camden, where you grew up. That's that hood's language, right? And it could be the King's English, right? But it's that hood's language. You understand? So black people have labeled it that, and no other people have labeled theirs that way. So it has that other connotation. But technically, where Mariana is from, that's her hood's language, right? And where Stephanie's from, same thing. It's just that we're the ones who label it that. Others label theirs different things. So hood is just what black people have called their language.
Right. Yeah.
Their neighborhood language. Let me put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
The neighborhoods in the different neighborhoods.
Right.
Because there can be changes within like a few houses down, right? And when
right.
Or in a few neighborhoods over. Yes. And you're asking about code switching. I don't think it was called that, but
that concept. You find
absolutely. So the Moldovan Romanian is very different than Romanian, right? And ours is more mixed with Russian, but also older, which some people call broken, but I think it's actually the more original Romanian, and then Romania evolved more, right? And I've experienced levels of that too, right? That I think some of us Moldovians may not like it if Romanians try to speak like us, right? Because we can understand them. Like that's what we learned in school. That's what we saw on TV, right? Like we get you. Because you can come across as like you don't think we're smart enough to understand.
Right, that they're condescending.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think the reverse shouldn't be the case. And I think the same applies to hood language, or how, like what you would call that, because I think we should always be careful with the issues of power in these cases, right? And it doesn't have to do as much with, because, I shouldn't expect you to, right, to match my dialect, right? But as a white woman, because now I'm a white woman in America, I have to be the one, right? Because of all the damage that has been done for speaking like you speak, right? Came from people that look like me. So I would say the same applies in, my home country, but not nearly as much, because we're more related to them actually, right? Geographically closer and all of that. But because they tend to be more educated and all of that, and they look down on us, if you want to be a good person, I think the person who has been more empowered should have some compassion and humility, right? And not, because it's just different. Like you said, it's not better. Society deemed that this one is better than the other. But, hood language can be a lot of fun to listen to, right? And it's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it. Same thing, I used to have my own biases against the way my culture spoke Romanian. I wanted to be closer to Romanian. I'm working on that. But yeah, and I code switch, actually. Honestly, I do. When I speak with Romanians, sometimes I do use different words. And I've also been told that, like, you're trying to be Romanian and whatnot. It's also because I also liked, reading a lot and whatnot, and listening to Romanian TV, whereas other Moldovians will listen to more Russian TV. So there's other reasons, but I think it boils down to power and privilege.
It sounds like you have a similar experience,
In some ways, yeah, but it's not a daily experience, right? Because Romanians live in a different country, right? And we lived on the other side of the river, and we didn't see each other all the time, right? And they didn't enslave us, and they didn't segregate us, and all of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think all of that needs to be considered, because it boils down, I think, to power and privilege to, like, tell people of color here that when they come into our spaces, but it's not your space, it's every American space, right?
Right.
More so than that, it's American Indians, right?
Right.
Use their space first. So you all go to spaces that belong to Native Americans, right? And you're being told how to speak English in order to be considered professional, right?
Yep.
Right.
So Stephanie, what about you and code switching? Have you ever had to do that or experienced that concept?
Yeah, I'm thinking hard about it. I was while you were talking, Mariana. I don't believe for myself I ever have. I know I haven't really done it much, and I don't feel like I've been in a position much. With my group or my people. I'm thinking through only in terms of, maybe smoothing the appearance, straightening the hair, that type of thing. And maybe it's because my mother was so hard on me and stringent with the speaking, because she was so concerned that, I would be made fun of if I didn't speak correctly. I mean, I didn't have that growing up. She had it more, generations are different, that she just really ingrained in me to speak one way. So I don't know if I'm representative, of my culture, but I don't know of any of that.
Now, did your mother have a heavy accent?
No. See, my mother was born here.
Okay.
My grandfather was born in Italy. So like the grandparents, one or
Right.
two.
And I'm thinking now, and this is just me thinking about it, because I'm thinking that because possibly your grandparents had such an accent that they forced their kids to sound more as they would think American, and then as she was taught to be forced to sound more American, then it was probably her teachings to you too, from coming down from the grandfather, to say, listen, you got to speak more properly. You cannot speak. You got to sound like you belong here.
Right. A little
that could have been a generational teaching,
Yes, a little of that, because they did experience that, because they spoke broken English. And also, my grandmother, actually, who was born here, did not finish high school. she was actually, she got married at like 16 in an arranged wedding, all this crazy stuff. So even with her more so, I think my mother, the education was a big thing. Actually, they grew up kind of poor-ish, where she couldn't go to college, so that was part of it too. So it was such a big deal that, I don't know. And I know I've been in situations where I've been made fun of probably for not code switching, with some of groups of my some
Right.
that did speak broken English, but I didn't. Yeah.
I just had another thought.
Go ahead, Mariana.
Go ahead.
So a lot of the Southern people, right? They speak differently too, right? And
Southern
we know
United States.
We know some people in Washington, right, that come from those states, and when they speak on TV, right, they don't code switch, right? They still speak with that Southern regional heavy accent, right?
Right. Well,
And I don't know if it's so much North and South, because my mom, all her people are from the South, and I don't think, and when we go down there, when we're amongst ourselves, I speak like a Northerner and they speak like Southerners, and when they come up here, same thing, because we're amongst one another, and that really doesn't matter. It's when we're in certain circles, circles, more professional circles, where we have to get somewhere, right? And because we need to be promoted and constantly growing in that industry, so I have to be more accepted in that industry, or so I think anyway. And so I do this, fitting in thing to make the white people feel comfortable with me, right? Because of their issues, not because of my issues, right? And so, but now, when we're just going, just say from different parts of the country visiting, that's really not so much of an issue,
right?
Even if we're running into people of other persuasions, when you don't. Now, again, there's a power privilege thing always going on. But when we're just visiting and whatnot, there's no power and privilege with that. Yes, there's an undercurrent, but I don't work for you. I'm just going to the South, and I'm going to a rally. I'm going to wherever I'm going. I'm not working for you. You don't hold anything over me, that I need to look to you for. So I can just be me. Now, that doesn't mean that on an occasion or whatever, because of what I might discern, that I might like, okay, I think this is an environment where I might need to code switch. You know what I mean? Because Black people are always thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because there's always an agenda and we have to second guess, what's going on all the time. So we have to constantly live being prepared. So
and sometimes, I don't know about you, Sharon, but sometimes you find yourself looking around to see who's there. So, and I don't think it's
open out the room.
It's really intentional, but when you scope in the room, then your demeanor changes depending on who's in there. Because, if you see certain groups of people in there, then you feel you have to adjust so that you don't be offensive.
Right. And Rosie, correct me if I'm wrong, but just to your point, if we're going somewhere and we scope the room and it's a room full of Black people, we can like relax. We can like, woo, that could be me.
You home.
I mean? It's just so much more, it's more comfortable. I don't have to perform, because I'll be accepted. Even with Black folks who are, let's say, bougie, right? But it's still a room full of Black people. And we know that, look, you come from the same place I come from.
Yeah.
So
and if anything,
the bouginess, okay.
And if anything, the bouginess might get you put on check. That's
what I'm saying. That's what I'm
bougie and people will check you.
From. Stop.
Yeah. They be like, man, you know where you come from.
Exactly.
Now, well, actually,
understand one another.
I'm relating to this because I prefer when I go into a group of, if it's all white, I prefer some Black people. I'm much more comfortable.
Right.
Because we don't expect you to be anything but who you are. That's why I think Black people don't expect anybody to be anything except who they are.
We're more accepting.
I totally feel that. I'm not even kidding when I say that. Like I'm comfortable more so. Like I feel better. I'm kind of like, oh, I think this person might be real. Like when there's a, mixture or a black person, I'm relieved if I was working with someone, or because I felt like, oh, I'm going to get now I'm stereotyping. I know that's terrible, but I felt like I could expect more genuineness. I don't know. I mean, there's of course white people like that too, but there were,
exactly. But that's kind of been your experience too. So
I like black women. I've had great experiences. And I think I had mentioned to you, Sharon, even like at work, I didn't, think when I got out into the world and I was working with this black producer and I really liked her. We had a cafeteria in our workplace, and I sat down with her and some of her other few black friends, and it was like total silence. I mean, they weren't rude to me, but they weren't used to mixing. And, I was just crunching on my lettuce. I ate quickly. They were nice enough, but they were surprised. You know what I mean? That I was sitting there and they kind of didn't understand. Like it just was odd.
Right.
So that was a new thing to me after high school, et cetera, and college. That it wasn't, it is more segregated in most places.
It wasn't like our experience in high school.
Right. And I know, Sharon,
the unique experience.
Right. We did. And I'm happy for that. And I know, Sharon, you had said to me, I remember, like, because when we would have our debates in class, which our teachers were good, they made us debate about stuff, that you were trying to explain to us something about how you were feeling with relation to race, and we didn't even get it. And it made you mad. And as
I went home and said, I want to go to a different school.
And I said to her, I was like, what did we do? What were you trying to tell us? And she's like, I don't remember, but I know. And I'm sure it was something real and relevant, but we weren't, in the mindset. We didn't get any of that. It was like, oh my God, no. I don't, I wish you could remember what it was. I'd be curious.
It was about race, but it was just, it was over the white kids' heads, and it was just very frustrating, and and it was a heated argument with many of us, and they called the because the teacher couldn't get control of us, and so they called in. I don't think it was the dean. It was I guess who was under the dean. I can't. Not the headmaster. No, it wasn't the headmaster. I think it was the dean. And then she quieted us down, but I was hot. I started the conversation because that's just how I am. I started the conversation, but not in a mean way. I brought it up because I think something happened and I wanted to address it. And then it just snowballed into this.
Right.
And that was the first time really that our class had gotten into, it wasn't everybody in the class, but it was probably like out of the 16, it's a small class.
Right.
There's probably a good 6 or 7 or 8 of us who got in the fray.
Right.
And but that was the first time and the only time that I had experienced our class getting into an argument like that. And obviously it didn't last long because we were right back to friends. Because we were real friends. We weren't fake
we
friends.
Never understood.
But we just got into an argument, and real friends can get over an argument,
Right.
So, but also too, I just had the understanding that you just didn't understand. And of course you don't understand because you're not walking in my shoes.
Right. And we don't know how, we didn't know how to communicate back then either. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We're all in our bubbles.
At the same time, I'm just gonna go there and say it. I know it's late, so I won't say much after this, but I think sometimes people like me, right, and Stephanie and others who like care about people of color, we need to also be careful because we still have a lot to learn. And sometimes we can take this, no, I'm not racist. See, I have black friends, or, I care about people of color, where I talk about race conversations, where I get into arguments with my family about race, right? Hold on a minute, right? If a person of color tells us that something didn't feel right, we need to
because you know what, when you think about it,
listening,
you won't have too many black people saying, I have white friends. Because
exactly.
That's you trying to justify your views, regardless of the fact that you see things in a different way than that ethnicity you're talking about, black people, and you see things differently. And then when people address you on it or point it out, then you're like, well, no, I have black friends. Yeah, and I have white friends. You never hear me tell you that. Stop telling me you got black friends, because when you tell me you got black friends, that's you telling me that I shouldn't be calling you a racist if I have to. You know, you saying I have black friends is more offensive to me than if you say, okay, I don't understand what you're talking about, but I'm going to try. Just say that. But don't say I have black friends. I don't care. I've got black friends, white friends, I got all kind of friends too. But I don't need
you can have friends of other ethnicities and still, you know, have prejudicial and racist views and just not really be aware
it doesn't
of it.
matter.
To be raised in the United States of America, you have to have race issues. All of us. We're indoctrinated into this a racist, patriarchal society, and we have to have these issues because you cannot not, because it's ingrained in our fabric of America.
Right.
So let's just stop, you know, denying that we all have issues with race. You know, that doesn't mean we're all racist,
right?
But we all have issues regarding race. Now, and Mariana, I want to say something, speak to what you were just saying. I think Stephanie said it, but it might have gotten missed. And I agree with you, Mariana. You know, when people of color say something that they may have been offended or something affects us about, say, what a white person did, white people need to listen and not think oh, no, I'm not racist. It's not about that. And so when I was speaking about our high school experience, that particular incident, I think Stephanie had said, you know, also too, back then we were young and it was a different era. So I don't think it was anything of them trying to, you know, be malicious or mean or not understanding. I think it's pure ignorance in the true sense of the word, not knowing. So now when you put say we were all 15 and 16, when you put 15 and 16-year-olds of today talking about this issue, you may get more, in some groups, not all,
they're more aware,
more of an understanding because they're more aware of race now than we were back then, or than white kids were back then. Let me put it that way.
Right, that's right.
And Stephanie, just FYI, I saw Sheila Branagh is watching. Hey, Sheila, she's one of our classmates.
Hey, Sheila.
How are you?
Sheila, you could tell some stories.
Yes. Melissa made a great comment. She said here,
Missy.
Yeah, she said, let's be real. We've had to have our own language, talking about Black folks, initially as a way to survive, as a way to pass information undercover when slavery existed, and we had Negro spirituals, and she mentioned one, Wade in the Water, for example. Yes, you know, slaves have their own code language, so they could say things that the master wouldn't understand. So especially, you know, when you're trying to escape, you know, you gotta, you know, come up with the language so people would know what the slave master would know what you were talking about. So our language goes back to slavery, language that we make, like we call Ebonics. You know, you heard of Ebonics? It's how we've made up language all of our lives in America. So it's just an offshoot, a continuation, shall I say? And Melissa also said the code language has continued and it's constantly evolving. Absolutely. And not just evolving in verbal language. Like I said, clothing, hairstyles, it's all switching when we're doing it. And not just because of this is how I want to look today, but because I know where I'm going, who I'm going to see, that environment I'm going to be in. I think I need to look a certain way and behave a certain way and speak a certain way. You know, it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Right. The only tinge of that I can say is, like, for corporate, yes, I have, you know, a little bit of that code, but amongst groups, no, I don't feel the pressure to change.
Right.
I just go in with my crazy self for now. But yes, in corporate life. And in fact, actually, when I was in Grenada and the island with my parents, I had my hair cornrowed and I did have to take it out for work.
Okay.
And of course, unknowingly, I started to take it out myself at 11 o'clock. I never went to bed. You know,
right.
My arms
were exhausted.
exhausted.
You never try that again, girl.
Right.
Like, what the hell? I had no idea.
That's an all-day affair, Stephanie. You started at 11 at night.
She was up all
But I
night.
had to, yeah. So
That's
you
funny.
could say I did it for that, but anyway. Wait, I did want to.
Even that's a problem because you should be. I mean, you should be able to wear your hair any way you want. Because the bottom line is, if they can go to work, if they can dye their hair different colors, if they can get relaxed, if they can do what they want with their hair, why now do we have to, fit into what the corporate America deems is the proper hairstyle? I mean, it's not if your coworker comes in and she had brunette hair yesterday and she comes in as a redhead, you're going to say, oh man, that looks nice. But if I come in with braids, no, you got to take that out.
Right.
Ethnic cleansing happening in that job.
It's the wrong priorities, There's
Melissa,
so many.
Melissa posted an article link about Negro spirituals, if anyone is interested in the history of Negro spirituals and how that all got started. So
language and everything.
That's fascinating. Melissa is so interesting. She gave
she's on target. She's gonna have to be a guest on our show.
That's y'all.
A wealth of information. We love it.
Really. That's awesome.
And we love people who aren't afraid to talk and share, because that's part of the problem with America. We don't want to talk about it. And we will never get anywhere if we don't start talking to one another to gain an understanding about one another's perspective. That's how we cross the divide. We stay divided when we don't talk.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And amen, Melissa. It's just hair. Like, why do we talk
it's
so much?
just hair. So, all right. So it's 7:45. We've been on the air an hour and a half, and we can stay on here another hour and a half and all day. But we're going to,
which we do afterwards sometimes.
It's so meaty. It's so much to it, and we have scratched the surface.
Right. We'll pick up. There's a lot more to this.
Absolutely. And I think we got to the second question, so that was good.
Yeah, we started.
What's the second question? All righty.
Right. Oh no, we didn't even get to the.
We didn't get to the second one.
No, we didn't. We did not get to the second one.
Was about high school, but only Stephanie and I just happened to talk about that.
Right. We started on it. I thought we'd segue, but we go.
Yeah. Woo! So any parting words, ladies, before we sign off?
So
I just want to thank my niece Melissa for joining us, because she dropped some. She dropped some good information on here for us.
Sure
so I appreciate that. I think.
And I'm so serious about being a guest on our show, Melissa. So look out for that. Or let me know when you're available.
That would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. I was enjoying reading some of the comments here on the side.
only thing I wanted to throw at, but not to answer for this time since we have to go, but I don't want to forget it. I do want to hear if any of you have had experiences, Sharon, Rosie, Mariana, of where you had a tough time where you were the only person of your color in a group. So Mariana, you would have to be someone, whatever other nationality, you were the only person or the only color. And then Rosie and Sharon, were you the only Black person in a white group where it wasn't comfortable for you? And I'm asking you that, especially you, Sharon, because you're comfortable in most places and you always were, and you fit right in high school. But I want to hear next time, what your experiences were when it wasn't comfortable for you, if it happened.
Now, just for the record, me and Sharon are going to have some situations, because I work for the phone company, so I had plenty of experiences, and I know Sharon had plenty. So
I've had plenty of experiences where I was the only one, but I don't have experiences where I was uncomfortable.
That's what I figured.
I don't think I was ever uncomfortable. I don't think I was ever uncomfortable either. I just knew that I had to adjust.
Or where it was your least favorite group, where you didn't. That's what I guess.
Right. And one of the things, and I know you said that to really go into this, but just to throw this out, because society is predominantly white, and that's the the white supremacist society that we live in. Black people, we have to fit into that. So we're used to fitting into that because that's our society.
Yeah.
But that's why I think white people tend to be more uncomfortable when they come into black spaces, because you don't have to go into black spaces. We have to go into white spaces.
Right. And the few times I've been, I did take note, and I thought, oh, I guess this is what it feels like. Didn't feel bad, but it felt different. You know what I mean? Right. I was like, oh,
right.
You know, and it was just a handful of times. But anyway, I was curious. We can talk more about
that's it. That's a good question. Very good question. Maida signed on. Maida goes to church with myself and Rosie. I gotta mention her comment. You don't know what you can and can't say these days. Everyone gets offended about everything. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, it's true.
It's like, what happened? Like, we have no thick skin anymore.
It's so true.
Can't say anything.
It's a barrier to have conversations, of course.
Very true, very true. And I don't think that we should just, speak willy-nilly and have no filter. But everyone's so sensitive. Like even comedians. But with comedians, nothing is off limits. But now, comedians are like, wait a minute, can I even be funny?
I know. I know.
Right. So, but that's a great comment, Maida. Thank you so much for making that comment. Very true. Melissa, this was nice, y'all. Thank you, TT, for sending me the link. Thank you so much, Melissa and Maida and Danielle. And I think I saw Danique up there earlier and a couple of others.
Artelia Moore, Latisa.
Yeah. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate you so much. Wait a minute. So we got Rosie, we got Stephanie, Mariana. Did you have any parting words?
Well, I was actually very grateful to Melissa as well for everything she was sharing. And I wanted to say thank you to all the people who added to the conversation.
Awesome. And I want to say thank you as well. This is has been an engaging conversation, a great necessary conversation. So we want to keep this conversation in the forefront of the minds of the people so we can make inroads with this issue of race in America. And so we'll be back on in 2 weeks, ladies, on the 30th. Is that okay? I can't do the first week of October. That's our normal week, the 1st and the 3rd. So if we could do the 30th, that would be great. So that's 2 Thursdays from today, ladies and gentlemen, that we will be back on at 6 p.m. And okay, all right, I'm not trying to prolong this, but it just came to my mind. I said 6 p.m. So let me just say what we talked about before we went on air tonight, because we were late. We got on about 10 minutes after because we were all doing something, whatever. And so Rosie said you should put, I think it was Rosie, put CP time, colored people time. Right. And then Stephanie and Mariana said their experience with their own culture, they are late too. So it's not just black people.
I was the one late tonight.
Mariana brought it up.
Italians are the worst.
Right. And so Mariana had that same experience. So it's all of us.
The late ones.
Right. So that's great. So anyway, but 6 p.m. is our time.
But when we do show up, right?
Right, we show up.
We show up strong.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you
all righty
at 6 p.m. on Full Life Communications with another live episode of Race Matters, having the hard conversation, but in a safe place. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Shalom. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.